The guys are off today. We've gone pretty hard since Saturday, just with practices, film sessions, and trying to improve. So today they are off. We will get back at things tomorrow, and really turn the page onto UTEP. Obviously, UTEP, very capable team. The exact same scenario kind of last year. For those of you that remember, we lost kind of a emotional game to New Mexico State, and unfortunately allowed it to carry over and affect us in our next game, which turned into a loss against Tennessee Tech. So, my job, our job, to make sure we grow from that, and make sure that we have our best effort against UTEP here on Saturday, and not duplicate what happened last season in the Tennessee Tech game. UTEP has a lot of really good young players. I think I've said before my thoughts on Coach Terry. He's got some tremendous transfers sitting out. I think he's going to do a great job there. But right now, trying to do it with some younger guys, which may seem to think that you're okay at this time of year, but they're very talented young players. And Gilliard is a little left-handed guard, very similar to A.J. Harris. He can make some shots. He's tiny. He can create a lot of advantages offensively, and he's scoring at a really high level right now. So we've got our work cut out for us, not only to prepare for UTEP, but also just to turn the page as a team and prepare for the next game. So we've had 3 really good days, and I think we've improved. After today's day off, I believe we will do the same thing here the rest of the week, get Saturday's game, and then a whole other week to kind of prepare going forward. So a lot of good practice time for us to continue to develop and grow and learn from not only this game but this past game, but also just where we're at right now and improving over as a ball club.
That game Saturday, was it kind of like, for you guys, was it kind of like a slap in the face as far as to wake them up, like, hey, look, every time you get on the court, it's go time. Was it kind of like that? You know how you can have some losses that actually, you don't want to call it a good loss, but it might.
You'd like to hope. I think when you look back on a season, whether it's us looking at the end of last year, looking back on last season, or this looking back on this season, you have those pivotal moments. You never really know what they may not be until what happens after. So that's, to me, where Saturday comes into play, and the games even after Saturday, and how we respond to what happened will dictate whether that comment is accurate or not. I hope it is something like that, but we actually have to go out and respond now.
I know AJ got hot, but it can't just be about one guy. What else did you guys, maybe watching film, learn that you guys could have done better? And is there anything in coaching that you could have done better? Maybe switch up to a zone, maybe back off a little bit so the driving and the penetration wouldn't happen so often?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something we've been really discussing and I've been thinking about for the past 3 days. I think you don't want to go, and that's really the battle, you don't want to make too many changes or make too many generalizations off of a 6-for-6 night. We lost at Utah State last year on a kid who made 6 threes. Played them twice afterwards, and he went 1 for 6. I think over the long haul, those numbers usually kind of go into your favor. But in a short spurt, with a kid who was 1 for 10 coming in, he got hot. It's 18 points, which are a lot of points in any game. To me, it's relatively anomalous, and I don't want to start doing too much in response to what potentially could just be a isolated incident. At the same time, you don't want to just walk away saying everything's great just because a kid got hot. And there's some things we've obviously been working on in practice the past few days to clean up what we think would be problems, regardless of whether he made those shots or not.
So you're not opposed to zone?
We zoned 1 possession, and he made a 3. So if you look at his 6 threes, 1 in the middle there, we were in zone. We played a possession. He made 1. And it just probably made me a little gun-shy to go back to zone, given that he just made 1 in the zone. So really, when you break down his 6 threes, they came against different size players, different scenarios, and different options. It wasn't like I looked back and said, well, he made his 6 threes against this. And we went through, as a team, Brown's 20 and Harris's 31, and looked at the different ways that those points came about. And they were spread out across the board. It wasn't like there was one particular scenario, be it a zone or be it a one-on-one or be it a ball screen or be it a whatever, where we were getting beat. Those guys beat us across multiple positions and multiple scenarios to get those 51.
Coach, I know you guys asked for NCAA to consider. Have you heard anything, and are you anticipating hearing anything possibly before then?
We had some interesting dialogue today, but it's not really anything directed towards us. They did respond. They're still, I guess, looking at more things. Whether that's substantial or not, I have no idea. I really haven't been able to get a good read as far as what is, I don't know. I just said substantial. What's substantial and what's not. So at this point, I feel awful for the kid, and we'll continue to look at different options, but I can't apply logic to how it's unfolded. So I don't know what to take of maybe things that they've done or will continue to do here throughout the process.
Coach, we've heard so much about what you didn't do well, and then another question for Rick. What did you do right to score 94 points and the crowd was on fire? And there had to be some positives in that game.
No, I've used this reference before. Jeff Van Gundy, when he was the coach of the Knicks, I think I've said this before, the Knicks and the Heat were in a playoff game, and I think it was Allen Houston took a shot, and it bounced around the rim multiple times, and then I think went in. And Van Gundy has used the term that as the ball was bouncing, it was good coach, bad coach, good coach, bad coach, good coach, bad coach, good coach, bad coach, good coach, it went in. But that's unfortunately the profession that we're in. And if Anthony Mathis makes the shot with 6 seconds left, we're all praising all the great things, and the other 149 possessions don't matter. That's my job now, to kind of look at the whole thing and say, okay, what really is a problem, independent of the outcome, and vice versa. So we did do some good things that we've done well this year. We can score the basketball. I don't think that's been a concern for us. We obviously have a very good offensive team. We've struggled defensively, independent, as Jeff said, maybe of just Harris's 6 threes. That's something we have to continue to improve upon, and we will continue to do so. But we did score the ball at a high clip. We did come back. We did show kind of what our style, what we try and do, which is win a game late or win a game as it goes on and bring our depth and style into play. But it just wasn't quite enough, obviously, to win the game.
Coach, you mentioned that you're kind of deep across the board. How do you rectify those kind of things as you move forward, to make sure that the impact are
Yeah, for sure. Again, it's really hard, and trust me, I've racked my brain about it for 3 days and thought about it a million different ways. If you're on an end, and this could be in any field, in any industry, and the probabilities are in your favor, and you have a individual who was a 29% free throw shooter, who was 1 for 10 coming into a game, and he makes a couple of shots, the reality is, for me anyways, it's always been, that's a good thing. Like, eventually you would like that person 29% and 10% to keep shooting because the odds are in your favor. When they get to 3 for 3 and 4 for 4, your gut takes over and you start to realize we got to do something about it. And then by the last two, even though a lot of analytics people will tell you the hot hand is a myth, the hot hand looked pretty real on Saturday. So, that's where I just used the reference, Utah State last year. We go to Utah State, Kobe McEwen goes 6 for 8 from 3 and pretty much beats us. Next game, 1 for 3. Next game, I think 1 for 6, and we win the next 2 against Utah State. So over the course of 120 minutes, we win. Over the course of 120 minutes, Colby McEwen's numbers maybe come back down again. And I don't want to just make it about him. And you would like to hope over the next 120 minutes, those percentages would fall into your favor. But unfortunately, in a 40-minute microcosm of a greater picture, they didn't. And that's where, in the heat of the moment, could you maybe do something different to take away the last 1 or 2 or 3? We tried. We did do zone. We did face guard. We did do some different things. But quite honestly, I guess it just wasn't enough. And that would be on me. That would be on me.
So, Coach, you've been talking a lot about how you don't want this season to start like last season.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you did with 2 wins in your 3rd game in the last to MSU. So
You study what I study, unfortunately. Yeah. I'm struggling. I did the same thing at New Mexico State. I think I lost 2 out of 3. I don't know what it is about the first 3 games of a season or 4 games of a season, but clearly I it's something I need to work on. I felt the same way when I was a head coach at New Mexico State. Felt the same way last year, and right this very minute I feel the same way. That's where hopefully this trajectory will change going forward. But I know what you're saying. I've thought the exact same thoughts that I've got to become a much better coach in the first 3 to 4 games of a season. I don't know. I cut you off, but
I was going to ask about how important UTEP is going to be, but I feel like
huge.
Kind of
And I just talked about it. Like I said, I think that was Tennessee Tech last year. And that's on me, probably maybe not moving on quickly enough, maybe not understanding how to prepare more for teams at the beginning of seasons that you don't have any data yet on, or whatever it may be. That's my own weaknesses as a coach that I have to clearly improve upon, because it's a pattern now for 3 straight years that I've lost, or the teams I've been on have lost some pretty key games.
Coach, in covering you, we come to know that your bench is going to be substantial. But in this game the other night, and somewhat the first 3, are you getting enough production out of when you go to substitute? Are you getting enough production when you take Corey out, or when you take Anthony out, or Vance?
Yeah, I think it's so hard. You know, again, I've just talked about it's so hard to start making judgments on 3 games. You know what I mean? It's such a long year. If I made judgments on guys last year, I mean, even just going through the UTEP game from last year, I mean, Joe Furstinger played, 12 minutes and fouled out, and it was, I think, even a week from now when we went to UTEP. And if I made those final decisions on a Joe Furstinger, on an Anthony Mathis, on a McQuatch Malwatch last year at this time, I mean, we might have won 4 games all year. There are times that even if guys aren't maybe doing what you would have wanted them to do by now, and I've seen our numbers, I've seen some things. There are some guys that maybe aren't doing the things at the level we would have expected. I don't know if that's a final decision. I would like to hope it's early enough in the process that they're still going to eventually produce at the level they're going to make them look better, and our team obviously look better.
So I've asked you about Anthony and the point guard thing before, and I kind of want to revisit it. 4 fouls again, best scorer on your team, and he's only on the court 20 minutes.
Yeah.
How many of those fouls, I guess through the first 3 games, and then maybe more specific on Saturday, were because he's a guy that just isn't maybe the quickest of foot as a point guard defending, quicker point guard.
Yeah.
Were they that?
Yeah, I think so far, we've broken down his fouls and gone over it with him. I'd say half are kind of an overzealousness that he's just being too aggressive, and I don't know if that really matters what position he is, but he's just trying to do too much. And like I think I said after the game, I told him on the bench during the New Mexico State game, then when those 1 or 2 just happen, a loose ball, you're both going for it. You pick one up. A loose ball, you get it back. A kid takes a quick charge. Now all of a sudden you're at 4. You've got to eliminate those 1 or 2 that are yours, the commission errors as opposed to the omissive errors.
And I guess the question that I really want to get is he still basically running point guards because you don't have other options? Or is this still, you believe Anthony Mathis gives this team the best chance as a point guard?
I think right now, based on, and, Drew obviously getting hurt, has retarded his development or ability to get on the floor quicker. Yeah, obviously there's an injury, but unfortunately that doesn't really enter my mindset. But Drew just being a little bit behind, his minutes maybe aren't where they could be, and Keith is just I've talked about a lot. He's a terrific talent, but he's still learning a lot of this. So as Drew and Keith go, will just as much dictate Anthony as much as I want to dictate Anthony. So I think balancing those 3 guys between a position or 2 is something we're going to continue to monitor and just do whatever we think is best in all accounts. Winning that particular game, growing as the year goes on, and obviously building a program at the same time.
Coach, 2 quick ones. Who won the hustle points in that game? The loose balls, hustle. And what's your philosophy on naming a starting lineup, a regular starting lineup, as opposed to find out moments before the start?
Yeah, they go hand in hand for us. So we chart deflections every game, which will include diving on a floor, which will include a hustle play. And our goal is 40. And I think over 40 since I've been here, we've lost once. I think, if I remember right, I think we had 41 at Nevada and lost. And I think that's our only loss over 40. I think 45 and up were undefeated. And we had 32 against New Mexico State. It was our season low. And I think that is a great indicator of us not doing the things that you're talking about. And that's the first stat we go to Saturday night when we bring them all back in. We can talk about a million different things, 6 for 6, this, that, and the other. We were at 32 deflections. We did not get where we wanted to get to with our hustle, energy kind of points and plays. And that, to me, and I've showed the guys this, you can look at a million different stats in the, whatever it is now, 30 whatever games since I've been here. That stat, to me, it's not, Jeff had a 20-plus turnover one. I mean, there's a lot of different stats you can pull and try and get to wins and losses. For me, deflections has been our number one thing, and that's why we start for it. So based on how deflections go, that indicates who will start the next game as a way of rewarding the type of behavior that I think directly or as strongly as possible correlates to success or winning.
Coach, going back to defense, in a lot of games this season, your team is going to have the size advantage.
Yep.
You guys also like to play man-to-man, but it seems on a lot of occasions that you guys give up second chance points. Just kind of how do you fix that and adjust and utilize your size to prevent that? It's
a great call. It's something that there's a lot. I wish I could say it was just simply one thing. We need to do this and this will change. Because of the way we play, we are going to be in rotations. It's the reality of it. Teams that play the way we do are very rarely great defensive rebounding teams. Pack-oriented teams are going to be great defensive rebounding teams. That's not to excuse the numbers, because we had some great games last year where we did clean up the glass. And we did get really good at our rotations that start with defense and finish with box outs. The reality is right now we have not developed enough in that to be able to finish and get the rebounds at a greater percentage than we're doing now. And that's something we have to improve on to be more successful as a basketball team.
Could you may have answered this, but from what you're seeing from Drew, again, we're getting back to the 3-game game thing.
Yep.
Eventually, do you foresee those 2 young guards being able to handle the point so you can move Anthony to a 2 guard and put him on the wing where he is deadly?
Sure.
I mean, did you see that in glimpses? on Saturday?
You know, I think right now, at the percentage that Anthony's shooting at and the scoring that he's scoring at, I'm not in a panic mode on Anthony. You know, I'm not looking at it going like, you know, we need to get 15 more points a game out of him and this is on us. I would definitely like to get to a point where we have the option, where we have great point guard play, great two-guard play, and we can just put the pieces in the best we want. The reality is, particularly right now and in the early part of the year, I feel like we've had to put him there for the best overall interest of the team, and I don't think it's hurt him significantly. I think he's still been able to have some really good games and make some really big shots for us. Ideally, we can get to the point where then we can just do whatever's best because we've got great point guard play and great off-guard play.
You kind of went through this last year a little bit because Anthony didn't play the point prior to
Yeah.
coming here. I mean, do you see similarities between last year and this year?
Yeah, unfortunately, I see a lot of similarities to last year as far as us not being as far along as I'd like us to be, because I really, really, really wanted to be good early. And I'm not going to say that we can't be just because of one particular game. I'm hopeful that Saturday and the following Saturday and the games progressively from there will demonstrate that we have grown and we are further along. But that's up for us now to go out and actually do. And provided those games don't go the way games went last year, we'll be able to look back on this game as an anomalous one, and we can kind of feel like we've made progress one November to the next.
No idea what goes on in the huddles, and this is just a curiosity question. About 22 seconds left. You guys hit a big basket. It seems like in those situations when a team is coming back after a made hoop late, timeouts are called. I guess there's defense to set up, talk about whom to foul, things like that. But it sure would have been awesome. It's easy hindsight.
Yep.
To have had that timeout in the bag with 6 seconds
No
left when you
question.
get the turnover in the
No
corner.
question.
How does the coach process all that in real time when
Yeah.
you don't have any time?
No, and I hate using them. I've always tried to keep timeouts for late in games. I felt like we've always had them. We had a couple of kind of unique things come about. Obviously, their run trying to minimize things. And at the end of the day, as you say, it'd be great to have one in the bag. I didn't want to take one home with me after 22 seconds. You know, so it's a little bit of a catch-22. It's why I like saving them as much as I can. You know, you keep track of runs and try and eliminate runs whenever you can. But since I've been here, we've kind of let some runs extend a little bit to hold them for those scenarios. And unfortunately just didn't quite have one left. If I had to do it all over again, I don't know if I would have done it differently, because I felt at that point, I think it was when Vance made that corner three, we were close enough to call one and, like you said, get everything ready to make one last push knowing we didn't have any left, as opposed to them getting the ball in, maybe going down, getting something, we're unprepared, and we don't even get to the point of 8 seconds left or whatever it was.
And, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Cool.
Schedule-wise, I know there was a lot of weird things that happened with this, but you're in a span right now where you have 14 days and 1 home game.
Yeah.
And you have 11 days with 4 games in 4 cities, 3 states. I can't imagine this is ideal. And in the future, I mean, there's going to be teams that have 8 games before you guys play your 5th.
Yeah.
In the future, would you try and maybe get more games in that first month of November? Or is that going in the face of what you're saying, where you haven't had these good starts and you want to space it out? Or?
Yeah. You know, if again, even looking at it now, I like the way it's set up because we do need so much practice time. We had so many new guys kind of coming into the way we play. To me, this was still a big positive for us. At the same time, in the back of your mind, you're thinking about Carlton Bragg. You know, at the same time, you're thinking about a lot of different things when you're putting it together. And when a game comes up and, you know, Jeff works at Texas and says, hey, we can play a game on such and such a date, you start to look at all those different factors. How does it affect the home crowd? How does it affect the overall schedule? Where does it pencil in? How are we going to be at this time of year with all these newcomers? Would Carlton Bragg be eligible? How does this look? How does that look? You put it all together. It's never going to always work out exactly how you want. You're going to have to piece together some things as best you can. And if I had to do it over again, I'm looking at it now, I don't know how much I really would have done differently. Again, it's a very small sample size. What Isabel was saying as far as those first few games of the year, I hope that's not going to be a pattern throughout the rest of my coaching life. But depending on how these next few games go will dictate whether that is going to become a pattern or not. And hopefully we respond Saturday, and hopefully we respond the following Saturday, and hopefully we can respond in ways that, when your record's a little bit different, you can look back and say that was one game. It's not a pattern that Paul Weir's an awful basketball coach in the early part of the year.
Would you rather have had instead of a week off after a New Mexico State game, which in this case was a loss? Would you rather have played a game following Tuesday or Wednesday?
Well, we did last year in Tennessee Tech and lost. So, and again, that wasn't necessarily by design. Like we spaced it out just because we thought maybe we'd lose. It was really just Thanksgiving. MTE changed. This is when a lot of MTE games are kind of going on. Really, I just wanted a lot of practice time. That's why we moved the exhibition game back. That's why we moved some of these games back. That's why we kind of scheduled those home games right after Christmas. Right after exams, before Christmas. We kind of had all those different things in our mind when we were kind of putting it together.
So obviously, during preseason, Nevada was ahead of everyone, but New Mexico and San Diego State were kind of switched between second and third. I don't know how much you watch of other teams, but they were playing Duke yesterday, and they held them to 90 points, which is something Kentucky couldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever watch those games with teams like San Diego, who people compare you a lot to, and think, how would I have performed against a team like Duke?
I think looking at scores in November is very dangerous. I can think of some games, and I'm trying to remember who San Diego State lost to last year this time of year. I just think there's games. I've seen pictures of games played in front of 3 people on an island somewhere. Those games can go a lot of different ways, and I think a lot can be drawn from some games in November, maybe too much so. And quite honestly, I don't really look at anyone in our conference until we're about to play them. Right now, focus is UTEP, doing whatever we can. So much, even if for whatever reason I wanted to take the time to go and look at San Diego State's games, they're going to change so much between now and when we play them. I just think that time would be kind of wasted, as opposed to how can I fix our team and how can we find a way to beat or win the UTEP game. Sure, potentially. I think you do probably a lot more of that in the off season than when you would in season. Maybe things come about in season with things that come up that maybe you didn't know were going to come up. They could be injury related, they could be style related, they could be whatever related, and maybe you think of another team or another program that did something a certain way that you want to go study quickly because maybe there's a thing or two you can steal. I think that stuff would definitely happen. But right now, as far as looking at San Diego State for that isn't something that I've done, no.
Coach, how do you feel like you guys are doing?
That's another good question. There's a couple of guys with some numbers down that don't really resemble their greater numbers, and again, it's 3 games in, so you'd like to hope over the course of the season they'll get to where they get to. We shoot a lot of free throws. I liked where we were at going into these last couple games, and I don't know if we've shot it there as well. Vlad's a guy that didn't shoot it great last year, hasn't shot it great this year, so hopefully we can continue to work with him and get him up. But the other guys that are down historically, Dane and McQuash, they've shot it much better than that. So I think hopefully in time they'll get their numbers back up.
Coach, as I was a kid, the rivalry with UTEP, the Miners, the association with Don the Bear Haskins.
Yeah.
What fun. What's the true significance to you about resurrecting this UTEP-Lobo rivalry?
Yeah, I was very thankful to Coach Miller last year at Arizona for willing to do the series, and I'm very thankful that last year Coach Floyd decided to redo a 4-year deal to keep this going. I think that was something he understood the history of it as well, and realized that as business-oriented as college basketball has gotten, the history of this region and the history of basketball, sometimes it has to trump that. And his willingness to sign on to a 4-year deal was terrific. It's going to keep this rivalry or series going. They beat us last year. They beat us at their place. And it's our job now to protect our court and bounce back, obviously, from a loss and trying to come out on a winning end.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.